Hi, I'm Doug, and welcome to my how and when to repot a Hoya video. I've got this Hoya right now, and I'm pretty sure that it is a prime candidate for repotting. You can tell by squeezing the plastic pot, and it's rock hard, and actually the pot has begun to lose its shape a little bit because the roots are so tightly packed in here. So I'm going to try to unpot this as the first step in the process. And I'm going to do that by squeezing this plant all the way around. That's what's great about plastic. Pretty hard to do this with pottery. Just don't quite have the hand strength for it. We'll pull this out of the pot if possible and take a look at it. Okay, you can see, although it has a healthy root system, nice and firm roots, no sign of root rot, that it's clearly a candidate for repotting. Now, one of the first steps you want to do is to find the proper size pot to put this in. You do not want to go too large. If you were to put this plant in this pot and fill it all with soil, I'm pretty sure that you stand about a 90% chance of losing this plant and rotting it. When you repot, you've got to step up a pot to approximately an inch or two larger than the pot that it's in. Now, I considered these two. Either one of these would work, but my concern is that this pot here is only probably an inch higher. The diameter around would be just about perfect for this plant. It would work pretty well. I just would like to have, if I'm going to go through all this work, I'd like to have maybe an extra inch of soil in the bottom. So I came to the conclusion I'm going to choose this pot right here, readily available at Walmart. It says, I don't understand the measurements of pots and how they assign them because it doesn't make really a lot of sense. It says 4-inch plants, but clearly that's incorrect since this pot here was bought as a 5-inch pot and this is a 6-inch pot. So I would say that this would fit plants that are approximately 6 inches across. So I think we're going to use this pot right here, going on my judgment. So first step is to put approximately an inch and a half or so of new potting mix. This is the potting mix that I use for everything. Large perlite, small orchid bark, touch of lime, some peat-based potting mix. You can go to my website and find out exactly how I make it. There's a little bit of charcoal in here, and it's what I use on 95% of my Hoyas. So we'll take this over here and we will begin the process. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm repotting, and I prefer to do this in the summer for one thing, we're dead in the middle of winter, is in the summer I will blast this with a high pressure hose, and I will loosen up all these roots in here to allow it to properly spread out and begin growing rather than leave it in this ball state. Since I don't have access to a high pressure hose, and that generally the wife wouldn't appreciate running that in the dining room, as it would make some kind of mess. I am going to bust up this root ball on here a little bit just to loosen it up and allow the roots to have an easier time to grow into the new mix. That if you don't do that, you stand a chance of the roots sitting in a wet mass and rotting. So I just like to loosen this up a little bit. Don't worry if you break some. Try to break as few as possible, so you don't set this plant back too far. So we've loosened this up a little bit on the bottom. Probably the best we can hope for. With a high pressure hose, I try to blow out as much of the old mix as possible to allow the new mix to adhere to the roots as quickly as possible. So we have a little bit of root fanning going out. Then we're going to test it in here, see if I put enough soil in. It looks like I have not, so we're going to add a little bit more. And that looks like it's about right. I like to leave it down. Ideally, you would have your pot down in there, the plant that you're repotting, so that's about half an inch below the rim, so that when you water this plant, the water doesn't come pouring over the side. And the next step is you're going to begin wanting to push the new soil all around the edge of the pot. This is never a fun job, but one that's got to be periodically done. On average, I do this every 1 to 2 years on my plants. It tends to make a mess, much easier to do outside. I'm only doing this now because, 1, I have the time, and 2, in my artificially lit grow room, the plants tend to grow all year round, so I would not recommend this if you're growing in a regular house in cooler, damper conditions. This would not be a time to repot. But if you're growing in warm, humid temperatures, it's much more difficult to make a mistake. And generally, this is about the best way that you can make sure that you're going to have some really good hangnails, because when you push all this soil in all the way around the pot, the only way to really do it is to do it with your finger. Sometimes you think you can have that soil filled in pretty good, but then when you push hard with your finger, you find out you've left air pockets. You don't want to leave air pockets, because those nice healthy roots that you saw will quickly dry out, and it's not really what you want. And ideally, you're going to set this plant back very little, because you won't have disturbed the roots all that much. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to take another opportunity to push in a little bit higher of a trellis. I just have a piece of wire that I obtained by taking a campaign slogan sign, or vote for me. I pull those wires up at the end of elections, and it gives me a lot of material to make simple trellises out of. This here is obtained from Amazon. With shipping, they're probably $1.50 a piece. They make a good Hoya trellis that lasts quite a while, and they're easy to push in. So we're going to take a look in here and see where might be the best place to be able to force one of these trellises in. And it looks like I could probably slide that in the back. That'll give it a little more something to be supported against, which you can clip to here in any number of ways. I like to use the bumblebee insect clips. And the last thing that you do after having repotted is to water it in good. I'm going to grab a tray so I don't pour water all over the floor. So we water this in good. Doesn't hurt to have a little fertilizer in the water. Help those roots develop as quickly as possible. So I like to water the new mix in. It helps put the soil and make it follow the contours of the roots a little easier. It pushes all the fine particles of the soil down in. So what you didn't get by pushing with your fingers, you can quickly get by watering. I actually generally prefer to do this with using a a sprayer in the kitchen sink, but in the interest of the video, I am doing it out here in the dining room. So you want to water it in really well. And I generally find that it takes a while for new soil to be properly dampened and hydrated, because this tends to want to just go straight through without actually wetting the medium. So in a couple of days you're going to want to do this again, and then you'll probably be good for a week or so before you have to water again. So hopefully this plant will take to this well and it will help produce a lot of new growth. The biggest reason that it needed to be repotted was that after a while the growth begins to slow down, it begins to become stunted. You have to water it much too often. Every couple days you'll find that your pot will be completely dry. That's an indication that it needs to be repotted. So I think this plant will be a lot happier, and that's how I pot up a Hoya and determine when it needs to be repotted.